Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to leave the old year behind and come out swinging, scratch that, or kicking like a goat for 2019, then do we have the show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Michael Lennox, psychologist, dream expert, astrologer, and the creator of the Daily Astro Alert. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about what's in the stars for the upcoming new year, why it's so special, what we need to know, and how we can go from survive to thrive in 2019. That, plus we'll look at lunar eclipses of the heart, making the impossible possible, duck and cover retrogrades, the importance of consistency, what it all means for the US of A, and what in the world is the importance of goat energy. Gotcha. So welcome back to the show, Michael. Are you ready to shine?
I am. I love your little bullet points, Michael. They slay me. And they're wonderful.
Woohoo!
Ooh.
All right, Michael. So before we dive back in, and this is literally the first time on the mic. We've put out over 1,000 shows now. First time on the mic in 2019.
All right.
I am so excited for it. It's the best way for me to kick this off, I feel, is talking with you. Before we dive right into things, 2018 kicked a lot of our butts. Why is that?
Well, let me first say that as I approached the idea of coming into a new year, where first of all, I'm busier down around this time than any other months of the year. Like I'm booked out like crazy because it's the beginning of the year. People are thinking about, well, what's ahead? And I remember being at this moment last year, sort of looking at the year of 2018, and I remember very specifically around the personal planets going retrograde, talking about that. The idea that in 2018, not only would Mercury go retrograde 3 times, as he always does, because the Mercury retrograde is like clockwork. Retrogrades are when we go in and we process and we're changing or integrating or going through something that's on the inside. Yep. That's the nature of a retrograde. We're used to doing this every 88 days with Mercury. Our minds are oriented so much so that you wouldn't even notice this. Like you don't notice that you go to sleep at night, dream, fall into REM, clear out the metabolic waste in your brain cells, form short-term memory, and wake up the next day knowing more than you did the day before, right?
Correct.
It just happens while you sleep. Same thing with Mercury. Mercury helps our brains integrate, get rid of waste, learn new things. When Venus goes retrograde, we're doing the same kind of processing, only now it's about our emotional body, our feelings, our experience with intimacy, our relationship with money, our interactions with other human beings in tight, spaces. Mars is about the physical body. So Mars going retrograde will be an integrative process of how we're walking, the choices we're making, what works for the body itself, literally the physical body with health and stuff, but also just how you're moving your body through space, what you're choosing to do. We had in 2018, Mercury went retrograde, Mars went retrograde, Venus went retrograde, then Mercury went retrograde. Boom, 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 boom. 4 overlapping retrogrades of the personal experience of every human being on the planet. Mm-hmm. Holy moly. That I couldn't have predicted in advance what it would feel like. But I can look back and say, oh my God, if you had a transformative experience in 2018, if you feel like everything changed and maybe you're still in it and feeling discombobulated, join the club. We're all feeling that way because we're coming out of a process where interchange was brutal and thorough and as deep as it can go. So change was happening, and change, sets us all up for tripping and bumping into the furniture.
We'll call it
so
shift
we did a lot
happens.
of that. Yes.
So on that note, this kind of jumps ahead several questions, but it begets the question. It was a beautiful year in many ways for Jessica and myself, but we also got our butt kicked. We had a miscarriage in November, just around Thanksgiving, or actually a little bit before Thanksgiving. Maybe you can tell us about having babies and the new year.
Well, I mean, what I can speak to you about the end of the year and November
Yeah.
was a cluster period where there was a lot going on with Mercury. Mercury in Scorpio, not Mercury, I'm sorry, Venus in Scorpio, which rules death and rebirth and the darkest recesses of what we might feel in our hearts. So your experience in your marriage with what's ultimately a terrible sort of potential tragedy of emotional proportions through loss and grief, a miscarriage, that's classic Venus in Scorpio.
Wow.
And for anyone who's listening who had an experience that they can fill in the blank, it might not be what you just described, but you had some sort of an emotionally grief-oriented shift and change. What I can tell you is, oh my God, what a blessing. Venus in Scorpio says, let's go to the edges of where you might be terrified to love, to be intimate. Why are we afraid to love? Because love means loss or the potential loss. Venus in Scorpio says loss is part of love. And when we get more comfortable with that, we have more and more of it. So while you may be a little tender still because it's only January and that was November, I can assure you that your marriage can be stronger from this. Your possible future experience of more children is absolutely impacted by your willingness to sit through grief and have the grief transform you. That happened for everybody last year in one version of a story or another that is individual to each person.
Fantastic. And then going back to the question that had you cracking up, what can you tell us about babies in 2019?
I don't even understand the question. Make a baby. You tell me all you. Let's meet up here a year from now.
All right.
You tell me about babies in 2019.
It's a deal, Michael. All right. Tell us about Saturn, Jupiter in their ruling signs right now. What does that mean for us?
So when a planet is in its ruling sign. So let's just sort of, what does that even mean? There are a bunch of planets and there are a bunch of signs. The signs, people have a tendency in astrology to think of the signs as the people they know. Like I say Leo and you think, oh, well, Frank's a Leo and Marcy's a Leo. That's not astrology. That's Frank and Marcy. The archetypes of the zodiac are pure energies of ways of being in the world. Yeah. And you've got two social planets that govern everything that happens sort of on the planet outside of your skin and your house. The personal planets are everything inside your skin and your house. So Venus, Mars, Mercury, the sun and the moon, that's your body and your home. Big consciousness, like five-dimensional consciousness are the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. The midline planets are the ones that create our experience of being in a community, being on the planet itself, work, hometown, government, the globe itself. And that's Jupiter, the planet that expands, and Saturn, the planet that contracts. This is the binary code of our social experience. So structure, lessons, limitations, pace, slowness, responsibility, sobriety, that's all Saturn. Jupiter is expansion, abundance, travel, education, all of the yummy, big breath things. That's Jupiter. Structure, tight stuff, that's Saturn. When a planet is in the sign that it is most oriented towards, in astrology we call it the ruling sign. And so Saturn, the planet that's the teacher and the karma guy and the lord of the underworld, not the lord of the underworld, the lord of karma and the structure maker, he governs the sign Capricorn. Capricorn, the goat, gets to the top of the mountain no matter what. He has the higher vantage point. He'll stick to it. He's focused. That's Saturn and Capricorn. The sign of Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's sign, that's the archer, the guy who wants to shoot his arrows everywhere and enjoy it. It's like, ooh, travel, ooh, good food, oh, something over here, oh, I've done that, oh, I've learned this, I've read that book, I've done this thing, that's Jupiter and Sagittarius. Those two are in alignment. So when a planet is in its own sign, it's like it's got its best power. it's dressed to the nines and ready to rock and roll and operate more fully. To have both social planets in their home signs in a significant year, and significant meaning life is accelerating on the planet, things are cooking up, and it's we're in this sort of heightened like crucible of I don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to blow up or survive this chaotic mess?
Hopefully, we're just going to hyperspeed.
Well, certainly stuff is happening, right? And if you think about it, the hard stuff is getting harder. And if you're having a good experience, the joyful stuff is getting more joyful. That's like Saturn in Capricorn makes the hard harder. And Jupiter in Sagittarius makes the yummy yummier. So that's the power of having both social planets in their ruling signs for the calendar year of 2019.
Very cool. Bring it back to me search, things that Jessica and I might be thinking about. We're calling this the year of leverage and love. Leverage means we want to put more structure in place. Go with it. Run with it.
Leverage, Saturn, love, Jupiter. It's perfect.
Woohoo!
Yahoo!
And I had no idea.
One of the things that's wonderful about what you just shared, Michael, and this is important for all of you all listening. Do you see how what he created just now was a principled language that allows him to tap into what they want to create for the year? Leverage and love. It's not getting too specific, and I want to create. If you get too much in the detail of it, the form's going to change anyway. Then the universe is just confused and saying, why are you grabbing onto a form that I have no intention of bringing you? But when you pull it back to principles, leverage and love, isn't it interesting that one of them is Saturnian in nature and one of them is Jupiterian in nature? It's not lost on me at all. Yeah. That's beautiful. You're right in alignment with something that the solar system is saying back to us.
And when I think about leverage and love, the leverage piece is what systems can we put in place? What rule sets can we put in place to make things easier, more replicable, and bring more help on board to give us the freedom to be more in the place of play, of passion, of love?
What you just said, what would be perfect language for something that is heightened during 2019. There is more available resource energetically to create structures that last and work. That's Saturn in Capricorn. So if you are out there creating something, you are supported by the structure maker himself being in his hometown with all of his tools, right? So that's the value of that. Same thing with Jupiter. It's like the expansion guy. He's in his hometown going, I know where everything is. I know how to operate here more powerfully and effectively. We can take advantage of that.
Perfect. So let's talk about goats. What is the archetype of Capricorn? What does this mean for us?
Well, golly, there's so much to say about structure and Capricorn and the falling apart of old structures, which is what we're living through. So let me see if I can't break this down in a way that's going to be helpful or clear to your lovely audience. Let's start with the archetype itself, right? So yes, the archetype of Capricorn, the physical image is the goat. The idea being that the goat will climb to the top of the mountain no matter what. That he will eat a tin can if he has to. His hoofs can grab onto any terrain. There's no limit to that goat getting to the top of the mountain. So as a result of that, the mundane way that most people think of the archetype of Capricorn is goal-oriented, steadfast, focused. There's a much more beautiful spiritual interpretation of this archetype, which is about higher vantage point. The goat isn't just mindlessly trying to get to the top of the mountain for the sake of having achieved something. The impetus behind it is, as a result of this effort, I will see further. I will have more vantage point from the top of the mountain than I did on the below. So that becomes important.
I'm having fun with this. My hobby this fall and winter has become late this fall, I put down my bicycle and started running to the top of the local hills, which are mountains. I mean, out in Colorado. And now it's snowshoeing up thousands of feet above my house, going, I am Billy the goat, and just wanting to. I am serious, and wanting to run up.
I love it. You're right in alignment. This is a beautiful expression. Now, I want to add into this conversation that we're talking a lot about building structure and moving forward in an affirmative way around structure. But please also know that one of the reasons why it is so frightening to be on the planet right now is because old structures are falling apart. And when I say old structures, I mean big structures like Congress, like the European Union, like the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And Saturn and Capricorn rule structure. So Saturn is the teacher, right? So Saturn coming back into Capricorn isn't just saying, oh, build more structure, because that's not just what he's about. Saturn is about karmic lessons. Saturn is the guy who says, are you learning your lesson? Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think humanity is learning its lesson based on what's happening on the planet?
I don't know. I take a positive look at this and say that as we get closer to precipice, more and more of us start to get the lesson. So I see a positive in it. I'm going to take that side of things.
Well, you just described my life vision. I agree too. I mean, I said it as a kind of like, crafty trick question. Yeah. Of course, you and I believe the same thing. That's why we do what we do. And it's important, though, in that, to not be afraid of looking out at the world and saying to yourself and to those around you, this is all falling apart. And yes, you can be afraid of that, or you can join in. And if you're wondering about that, so this will be very clear, joining in doesn't have to look like becoming a political activist if you're not an activist. Joining in just means you take responsibility for the structures inside your own consciousness, the war that you're in between your head and your heart, or those, you know what I mean? That's where what I do on the planet is, yes, it is crazy outside, but trust me, if there's a war out there,
bingo,
there's a war in here. What's accelerating in 2019 is there's an energy of, I'm going to use this word, destruction. There's a momentum of destruction energy that is described in astrology by the coming together of Saturn and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn that happens next year.
I lived on lived on Maui for many years. Next island over, Big Island, we have Pele. Yeah. Who is, in a sense, the goddess of destruction, but she is also the goddess that makes life.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's a beautiful symbol because it's you can look right out at that idea. You can see it. You can see the destructiveness of the lava. If you touch it, you won't make it. But you're also watching it get bigger. The land is getting bigger. So it's a perfect symbol. So let's go back to Capricorn.
Yeah.
So not only there's a thing that happens in astrology that would be more about the synchronistic lining up of cycles that we as astrologists we get very excited about when an astrologer sees that something is happening in a kind of, ooh, look at that timing and look at this timing. And Saturn moving into Capricorn did this. Last December, as we were getting ready for this year that we're just finishing up, Saturn moved into Capricorn for the first time in 30 years. And he did it exactly on the solstice. And then a year later, New Year's Day had the Sun and Saturn conjunct. Now, The solstice is the solstice. It's a marker. It's the shortest day of the year, and it's when we are reminded that there's an in-breath and an out-breath. And at this winter solstice in North America, we're at the out-breath, the dark, the feminine. And Saturn moving into signs is just another marker. It says we're changing style in the way that lessons and structure and karma is going to be experienced by you. But the fact that those two markers happened on the same day in December of 2017, that was pretty rare. So here we are a year later, and Saturn is still in Capricorn. Not that big of a deal in terms of a new energy because he's been there all year. But it's really interesting to me that on New Year's Day, a marker, the yearly meetup of Saturn and the Sun, conscious awareness and structure and lessons got together on January 1st. What are we doing on January 1st? We're thinking about structure, lessons. What did I learn? What am I going to do next year? That's like Saturn's all over that kind of an activity.
Goosebumps.
So there's power in this Capricorn focus, right? So now go ahead a year to 2020. 2020 is the year when the planet Pluto in Capricorn and Saturn in Capricorn are going to meet up. And twice during the year, the planet Jupiter will have left Sagittarius. He'll also be in Capricorn. So you've got this gathering energy a year from now, all through the calendar year of 2020, of Pluto, the power of death, destruction, change, transformation. He's the Lord of the Underworld. So you have the power of the Lord of the Underworld to change anything with the guidance of Saturn, who says we've got to change these things because they're no longer working. Then they get together. If Saturn's directive is let's change things that aren't working, Pluto says, don't worry about it. I can destroy everything that you need to be destroyed. You see, so there's this energy that's coming that we're in now that's accelerating that I think is going to make 2020 a rather alarming year. And something that happens in the middle of 2019, which can be our next sort of thing to unpack, is the coming together of Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn. That's about preparing us for some of the crazy stuff that's coming.
I'm almost afraid to ask, and then I want to dive into some of these key events here. Pluto and the future of the U.S.
Okay, so the United States has a natal chart, just like any thing, institution, event, person can have a natal chart, as long as you have an agreed upon start moment. And for us, it's very clear. It's July 4th. It's 1776. It's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because that's where it was signed, and it was the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Some astrologers do it for noon. That's when some do it for 5 o'clock, because that's when they think the signing began. Either way, we have a chart for the country. It's a Cancer country, by the way. The sun, Venus, the moon, Mercury, all in Cancer. Cancer is the archetype of the mother, the caring one, the protector. Yeah, I love the Cancer symbol of the United States is the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
She's in the shallow water where crabs live. And she says, come this way, baby boobala. Come over to me. I'll give you a home. That's America in its purity, and that's Cancer.
Yeah.
So when we were established in 1776, Pluto was at 27 degrees of Capricorn. Yes, I know it hadn't been discovered yet, but Pluto knew about us.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you a quick lesson on return, a planet's return. One of them that you know very well would be something called a solar return. When you come back to the place where the sun is where it was when you took your first breath, and it marks a moment where we are in consideration of where we're just coming and where we're about to go from the planet being back to where it was when we were born. You know this is your birthday. So when we turn another year older, we're usually in consideration. Have I learned everything this year, done everything I wanted to? Am I ready to be 56 instead of 55, right? The same consciousness is in every planetary return. Another fairly well-known planetary return is Saturn. The Saturn return is what happens when you turn 30, where the teacher, great teacher Saturn says, ooh, lessons, this dude is not ready to be 30 yet. He's not ready to be a full-on grown-up adult. Let's give him this lesson and this lesson and this lesson. So you understand the point of a return is the planet's consciousness will increase the efficacy or the presence of its consciousness in order to affect a proper we're ready to return kind of thing. Pluto is going to be back in 2025 where he was when the country was formed. We are in our Pluto return. And Pluto is all about death, destruction, change, transformation, and most important, shadow, hidden.
Bringing things out.
Bringing things out. The Pluto return is saying, oh my God, people, we have got to uncover all of this shadow stuff, or we cannot continue past the return moment. That's the drive for all of this stuff that's being revealed. And certainly in the United States, it's crazy with the xenophobia and the racism and the gender challenges. All of this stuff that's being revealed from an astrological perspective is the Pluto return. So as Pluto continues to move into that direction of that peak, and then we have the transits, the 2 years before that, starting in 2020. We've got an acceleration that I think is going to make things that you see out in the world much bigger than they are now. And listen, if you hear that and that scares you, sorry. I probably can't help you if you're that scared about it. It's the idea of like looking at the Trump presidency and saying this is terrible, but that's not how I see it. I see it as this beautiful opportunity to reveal, to have the underbelly revealed and shown to us so that we can heal it. So from my perspective, 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, these years are intense, but we're here for a reason. Those of us who are watching and opening our eyes and waking up are here to raise the vibration. So hopefully the scary pieces out there aren't deterring us. They're actually moving us forward to say, yes, I'm up to this task.
When I look at 2020 and I think of my own personal where I'm going in things, 2020 is the year that I fully unleash me as a writer again. With the show, it's been a challenge, but 2020, when you say 2020, I get this grin and I go, I know what I'm doing.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I'm having the same experience. 2018 was the year where I started investing in my business and shifting and changing how I structure it so that I can move forward and inspire more people by virtue of having the passive income over here so I can be teaching for free, blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. And 2020 is also the sort of like I've given myself till about October of 2020 to finish the business structure.
Yes.
Saturn, right? So I'm right in there. Now, if you are watching this and your experience is more of things falling away, being taken away, or being, sort of thrust into grief experiences because change is happening, dive in, lean in. This is the extent to which you are willing to dive in deep is the extent to which you affirm, you come out the other side raised up and lifted up.
So I want to dive into these things, no pun intended, specifically. But when you say to people who are listening, when they're in the thick of the thing, so there's no mud, no lotus, they're trudging through this, and you say dive in, what does that mean?
I got to tell you something. The simplest thing that it means is often it just means being willing to feel the feelings that you're feeling without distracting yourself out of them. Busying yourself above, spiritually bypassing by going in, oh, I don't like this dark, angry, judgmental feeling. I better go to love and light. Oh, all is well. It's like, yeah, but if you go too fast to the all is well, So some of it is just about being willing to be uncomfortable and sad and angry. And so I think that's what I mean by dive deeper. And if you need some help and assistance, there are plenty of people out there who are gifted and talented and educated and well suited to help you through any challenge.
I've been using kind of a Ram Dass term, kind of taking some ownership of it myself lately and saying to snuggle up with the discomfort.
Yes.
To get as comfortable with it as you can rather than push it away at this time.
Rather than push it away. One of the things that's interesting about 2019 that I think is going to be fascinating, that I think will also help people who are looking to release and drop challenges. If you're in a challenge today, I promise you it's historical. None of our, especially if it's how you are relating to other human beings, how we relate to other human beings in ways that challenge us have their origins in our past, in our childhoods, in our ancestry, in our history. And there's a point in astrology that would encapsulate the idea of anything that is from our past, from our history, from our karma, from our ancestry, that is held someplace in a point that can therefore be released. We call this the south node of the moon. Cool. So there's two nodes of the moon, the south node and the north node. The north node is the way shower, the pointer, the energy of life itself as we're moving into the future. The nodes aren't an actual planet. They're points in space created by the orbit of the moon, crossing paths with the orbit of the Earth. And when there's a particular alignment of these nodes and the sun, that's when we have our eclipses. So where the nodes are cosmically give us some clues about the forward direction of life itself and what's happening with the energy of the past. So the south node, the holder of the past, I'll give you one guess. What sign is he in?
It's either going to be in Saturn or Capricorn.
Well, Saturn is the planet, Capricorn is the sign, and yes. So here's the advantage of this. The movement of the south node and that energetic point informs us about how the past is being dropped. In the middle of 2019, Pluto and the south node will join up. And several times during the year, Saturn and the south node would join up. So to have an understanding of what I'm speaking about, consider the idea that the south node holds our past.
Yep.
Pluto transforms and changes everything, and Saturn says, with sort of stern orders and marching orders, here's what you got to do. So we are getting both the teacher helping us with our past, because the angle that is there is 60 degrees. It's a very productive angle. So the teacher in us. So just remember, I'm not talking about things that are out there. I think you might, your listeners are thinking I'm talking about planets. I'm not. I'm talking about the teacher in you. Yeah. The part of you that already knows everything that you ought to be doing and how. And then the change part of you, the part of you that's really willing and able to change things so utterly that it would look like a death and rebirth. And then the part of you that holds all of your past wounds, all of your family dynamics, all of the stuff you inherited that you're not even aware that you inherited, but you inherited it. That's South Node. All three of these are mashing up during 2019 in what will ultimately be, for the personal experience of people who are up to changing and dropping stuff, this is a year where more personal gunk will be releasable because of the way in which Saturn, the guy who structures all of this, is working with us, and because Pluto's coming along and saying, we're just going to change it all. Now, there's also a global implication about Pluto and the South Node coming together, And that'll be interesting too. I looked back to see when this occurred last, which was 2002. Interesting year. It was right after 9/11. In fact, January of 2002, Bush gave his Axis of Evil speech. During 2002, the European Union expanded, brought 10 new countries in, and established the euro.
Wow.
Like all of this stuff happened with Pluto in the South Node. It's like the distribution of power, but it was in the sign of Sagittarius. So it was more about the illusion of expansion. Look at the European Union, the illusion of expansion. Because here we are 20 years later, and in 2019, what's going to happen to the European Union? It's going to change so dramatically because of Brexit. So even just right there, it's like, oh, we do seem to have this 20-year cycle of Pluto in the South Node that make significant years of change and drama on the planet, and that's something that's happening in 2019. The advantage for us personally is it gives us a real chance to shift and change and transform deeply in our own skin. And then globally, it's going to be a big year.
I'm calling it a year of detox, of getting light. So you mentioned a few minutes ago eclipse. And when you were talking about the nodes, you mentioned the word eclipse. So I want to talk about a cosmic kickstart, because what is coming up on the 5th?
Well, our eclipse season happens every 6 months.
Yeah.
And eclipses are significant waypointers. In the old days, we used to call eclipses like omens of bad tidings. Huh. I think that was a boondoggle. Because I think bad stuff happens all the time. And so I think in the old days, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the court astrologer would say, "Oh, hey, Queen Mary, the eclipse is coming. Oh, don't do that ship trip out into the whatnot. Something terrible might happen. Then something terrible happens, and it's like, oh, look what happened." I just think the bad stuff happens all the time, and eclipses happen every 6 months. But they are change and transformative oriented. The breaking of the beam of light that the eclipse is. It's the light of consciousness is relentless. It's that sun constantly shining out and us constantly reflecting it back. And when the beam is broken at eclipse time, it's like a retrograde. It's like REM sleep. It's a moment of reset. Also, what happens when you sit with your computer for a bunch of time and maybe you upload some new programs and you make some adjustments? Those changes don't get fully activated until you've turned the computer off and on again, right?
Yeah.
Same thing here with the eclipses. Something that I'll just throw out there. I don't know how this would apply to the non-astrologer out there, but when we move through eclipse land, my mailing list signups increases. Huh. Everything gets busier.
Yeah.
And it's not because people out there know that it's an eclipse. It's just something that happens when eclipse energy comes. I think everything gets heightened. I'm an astrologer looking to grow my business, so I experience the heightenedness of the wormhole of the eclipse. We call it a wormhole, which is that takes you to another place in the fabric of the universe. That's what a wormhole is in quantum physics. It's a theoretical notion that I can be here in one instant, the universe can fold over on itself, and I can zip to another place in the universe in an instant. That's what's happening in the eclipses. So if the new moon is a time to set intentions, and the new moon that's coming in 2 days is an eclipse, then the intention-setting power of the first new moon of the year has the eclipse mojo built into it. That is a big new moon intention-setting energy, and it happens 5 days after the new year starts. And guess what sign the sun and the moon are in?
We're going with some Capricorn again here.
Capricorn! So that just what it means for us is that since most people are already at the new year up to the idea of what am I going to create?
Mhm.
What new stuff do I want to bring into my consciousness? We do that at the new year anyway. We do that at the new moon anyway. We do that at an eclipse new moon anyway. But they're all happening at the same time. New Year's, new moon, and eclipse. And it's a new moon solar eclipse. It's not the full moon lunar eclipse. It's the new moon solar eclipse that comes first 2 weeks later.
Planting time.
It is planting seed time. So yes, it counts more than ever. There's a lot of forward moving mojo in the still dark spot that we're in right now. We're in really deep feminine seed planting territory as we move up to this new moon eclipse that's coming. And yeah, the seeds we plant have legs.
I love it. So there's an expression I like to use, which is making the impossible possible. Tell us about Saturn, sextile, Neptune, and what's going on this year with this.
Well, here's what I love about Neptune is that Neptune has a negative. All planets have an affirmative and a negative, a positive and a negative. Level of expression. At the top of the affirmative vibration through Neptune is where we get our spiritual connection. Neptune is the great spirit. Neptune rules the oceans and therefore the collective, the Christ consciousness, everything that we experience when we are in prayer, meditation, any sort of practice, even just mindfulness, anything that is about our energetic and spiritual nature needs to have Neptune involved. One of the things that is happening during 2018, well, there's two. Both involve Neptune. One is right in the middle of the year, right around May. There's an alignment of Neptune coming into contact with the north node of the moon in a triangle. So that's a beautiful, harmonious flow. In a trine, when two bodies relate to each other in this open, harmonious geometry, each one has its full voice. And in this case, this trine that's in the middle of the year is between Great Spirit, our spiritual nature, and the north node of the moon, which is how we're moving forward. The north node of the moon just spent a year and a half in Leo, very masculine sign, ruled by the sun, very much about the father god part of the equation of masculine and feminine creative energy. When the north node of the moon moved into Cancer at the end of 2018, now we're in a year and a half process where the best use of your spiritual focus is going to be on feminine energy, the great mother. North node of the moon is in Cancer. That means that we, as we want to move forward, are going to move forward more effectively as we embody feminine principles of patience, tenderness, compassion, and forgiveness. The last year and a half, it was all about personal self-expression, North Node in Leo. So the movement forward favored being out in the world, shining your light. So if the focus of moving forward in the world is about self-care, Cancer, nurturance, Cancer, and you've got the great spirit in Pisces in a triangle, that means there's a wide swath of spiritual energy, feminine principle, focus available to the planet in a very big arc. I'm loving this trine in the middle of 2019. So all of you who are on a spiritual path of any kind, whether you do it through yoga or breath work or Vedic meditation, all of us are going to find an easier access to our spiritual nature as a result of this trine. At the same time, 3 times during the year, the planet Saturn and the planet Neptune will meet each other in a 60-degree relationship. Saturn is the disciplinarian. Saturn is the guy who's giving you a hard time for not meditating every day. Neptune is the guy we connect to when we meditate. Neptune doesn't care if we meditate every day because Neptune is just out there being the great spirit, but Saturn does. Saturn says, are you being your best self? Are you operating at the highest level you possibly can? Neptune says, do that through your spiritual focus. A 60-degree angle is creative and productive. The peaks of this are late January, late June, and early November. Those are peak moments of this chop wood, carry water, disciplinarian energy towards your spiritual practice. For any of you out there who are listening who have an addiction narrative as part of your story, this, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is this is very powerful energy for effective movement in the direction of sobriety, responsibility, and discipline while working with Neptune, which is spirit, but also escapism. So if you're struggling with your addictive stuff, there's energy coming this year that will help you focus and shift and change ways in which you're abandoning your own path because it's scary. But at the same time, if you're not, you're going to be kicked harder to the curb because of this geometry. So it's great news for discipline in the direction of increasing your spiritual practice.
Thank you. You used an interesting word here, which I'm going to relate to retrograde. You used the word escapism. Are there some peak moments of retrograde here where we really want to pause or go inward this year?
Oh, I would say that I think what I'll point out is the key dates of when Saturn and the South Node are going to meet up, right? So once during the year, Pluto and the South Node will meet up, right? That's the sort of and that's Pluto's movement is so slow that all we need is one. But 3 times during the year, there will be an increase in our personal experience of discipline and the possibility of escapism, or at least a moment where the teacher will be like, this is the moment, guys. I hope you're working hard right now. And the right now would be, let's see, I've got the dates right here. April 30th, July 3rd, and September 27th. Those are the dates that Saturn and the South Node come together. There's always more power before the date hits, and as soon as the date hits, it begins to wane. So the influence of this would be about 10 days before the dates I just gave and 3 or 4 or 5 days after the date I just gave. So those dates again, April 30th, July 3rd, September 27th, those are the dates that discipline and focus are going to be more important because the stakes are going to heighten up. And so I would say yes, that for anyone who's struggling in some of these areas, Saturn comes along and that's when we're going to be bumping up against our own sense of discipline. And forewarned is forearmed. And we can all benefit from increasing our discipline in our practice this year.
Since Jessica always wants me to ask her a question for parents and kids, usually I save it till just before the end. But since you're using the D word, the discipline word, what do we need to know about our kids for this year?
Wow. What a great question. I think that I'm just going to, I'm not a parent. Right? So I want to be really clear. And I channel divine wisdom for a living. So all I know to do is hear the question and open my mouth and see what wants to come out. One of the things that is so valuable for kids that I think that modern parents don't have an understanding of how it works is discipline. And I think because we're not talking about the discipline of attacking your children for not doing what you want.
Thank you.
It's about structure, creating structure for your children. When children feel structured around them, they thrive because they feel safe. So it's about making sure that your kids are are you creating for your children a world in which they can learn discipline and focus by celebrating their own creative and expressive process? I mean, that's whether it's little league or art class or ballet or family dinner or game night, or here's how we do it in our house, whatever that looks like. Creating structure and discipline for your kids and focus, teaching them about how old are your kids?
Oh, we're working on it.
Oh, you're working on it. Oh, you don't have any kids yet.
No.
Then I'm so sorry that how
Not
painful
a problem.
that. Yeah. So yeah, this would be also, I mean, so if baby making, now I get the question about the baby making.
Yes.
Have at it. There's certainly nothing inhibiting it. In fact, I would say allow like we talked about before, the grief experience of November allows you to become the more spectacular parent in the future when the right soul is ready to come in. But discipline is everything right now for everybody. I have a client who always writes me an email after I see, she might even be listening today. She doesn't like the word discipline because it's very sort of patriarchal and masculine or male, and that's fine. Except it's still a spiritual principle. It's still a lens through which we can approach a decision-making process. What would discipline do? That's the question to ask, I think, in all realms this year. When in doubt, what would discipline do?
What would Saturn do?
What would Saturn do? What would Saturn ask me to do?
Any other really important Capricorn date or dates for the year?
Well, let's I mean, in terms of the Capricorn, I would say we've given the sort of very specific ones that are Capricornian in nature. What I'd be happy to do for y'all right now is I'll give you a really brief summary of how the energy in the Capricorn mansion impacts all of the other mansions of the zodiac. Perfect. Now, I'm loath to do this because, I'm trying to teach people out there to get away from sun sign as what their definition of astrology is. Because understand something, Capricorn might interact with your sun in a certain way, but it might be pummeling your Venus placement. So you might think from what I'm about to say, oh my God, it's going to be an easy year, but you didn't know that Capricorn squares your Venus and your year is going to be filled with heartbreak. That's why, what I'm about to do can't take the place of, like what can happen in a private session. But in a very general way, the sun in a natal chart is the integrating center of you. And so if you are a Capricorn sun or a Capricorn rising, because that's where all of the energy is, the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn on Capricorn energy this year, last year, next year, all of these like period of the second decade of the millennium, very intense because conjunctions are all about forcing things to shift and change right at the source. If you are born in Cancer or you have Cancer rising, the opposite sign, it's a little bit more about being confronted perhaps by outside events. You see the distinction? If it's on top of you, then it's about you and the inside of you. And if it's in opposition, just like oppositions are like a force that you must reckon with, that's what you can expect with a sun or rising in Cancer. A lot of confrontation. The other cardinal signs, Aries and Libra, will receive Capricorn in a 90-degree angle. So if you have sun or rising in Aries or Libra, you can expect a lot of lessons this year. Big, because conflict and obstacle are the name of the game when two things meet in 90 degrees. It's the floor and the wall where they're yelling at each other. One says lie down, the wall says stand up. They can't agree. That's 90 degrees. So lessons, conflicts, and obstacles. If you're a Capricorn, if you're an Aquarius or a Sagittarius sun or rising, those two signs are only 30 degrees away from Capricorn. It's an intimacy kind of geometry. It's not like it won't touch you, but it's not like 30 degrees to be like, meh. Like if this is not an accurate astrology principle here, but it's a great example. Like if The conjunction on is like it happens to me, and the opposition is it happens out there in front of me. Over here where it's 30 degrees away. So Sagittarius or Aquarius. It's like, nah, not a big deal. Maybe someone next to you will be going through lots of change, right? But less so for the individual. It's the only two signs that get a real break. Down at the bottom, the Leo and the Gemini energy. Leo and Gemini will both receiving from Capricorn the energy of the great eliminator, the fork in the road. So if you are a sun or rising in Leo or sun or rising in Gemini, you are likely to be making changes in your direction. And the easiest energy of all are the earth signs. So if you the other earth signs besides Capricorn. So if you are a Virgo sun or Virgo rising or Taurus sun and Taurus rising, you're receiving all of this energy from Capricorn very easily with a very open consciousness. So that's now, and if you know any of the planetary placement in your chart, you can use the same descriptions I just offered for the different signs, only put it in the consciousness of the sign of the planet that you're considering.
Fantastic. So this is a perfect segue. Where can people go to find out more about this and to find your daily Astro Alert?
MichaelLennox.com is certainly the go-to place to meet me. I've definitely been exploding out in the Facebook world and the Instagram world. So that is where I put out most of my daily content. So there's a lot going on that I put out there for free that you can find on Facebook at Michael Lennox, or my professional page, which is Dr. Michael Lennox, DrMichael, which is where I suggest you go because I can't take any more friends on Facebook. And then Dr. Lennox Dreams is my handle on Instagram, and I put stuff out there as well. And then information about the daily Astro Alerts you can find right on michaellennox.com. And that is the daily description of the astrological transits of each day are sent out to your email box at 9 p.m. the night before Pacific time for the next day. It's every day without fail. The investment is only $10 a month, and people, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't get at least an email or two of people saying that they value the input really greatly. So I highly recommend it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. And we'll have all the links on our show if you want to come over to InspireNationShow.com to get you over to Michael Lennox and all of his different sites and channels, every way that you can find him. For people who aren't sure of specifics of their sign or their planets, where should they go?
Well, I'm not sure I quite understand the question. I mean,
well, there are people listening, and you're talking about nodes and what's rising for people, for instance.
Oh, well, you could certainly, if that's curious, you could go to any of the major sites on the internet and actually get a chart cast. Probably charge you $19 or so, but it'll have a little list and it'll say, your moon is in Libra, your Mars is in, blah blah blah. So that'll be helpful, and you can certainly have a private session with me, and I'll tell you all of that.
Woo! This has been phenomenal, Michael. Before I let you go, any last words of wisdom to send people off into the new year?
Have at it. Discipline, 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 discipline. When in doubt, turn within. Your spiritual practice is the only thing that matters. Everything else comes from that.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Thank you so much, Michael. This has been phenomenal. I remember your energy. We've had you on several times. I remember your energy for the solar eclipse, which is when actually Jessica and I did ceremony right before the eclipse took place for the welcoming in of our baby, which we're convinced she's just hovering around up here waiting for the time to be right.
She's waiting. Time's not quite right.
You had amazing energy there. You have 10x'd it for this one.
Thank you.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get your daily Astro Alert, and begin aligning and not getting kicked by your goat today. And shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Michael.
Michael.
Ciao.
Talk later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!